Now that students are back in school and we've settled into a new routine, Season 2 of our podcast will focus on academics, growth, and planning, and the inner workings of the district. Join us as we publish new episodes to break down all the ways we provide a quality educational experience for our students and staff. I'm Andrew Kim, Superintendent of Schools for the Comal Independent School District and host of Comal ISD Radio. Joining me today is our Assistant Superintendents, Curriculum Instruction Design Kristen Lueck, also our Assistant Superintendent for Elementary Education, Krista Moffat, and also Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Education, Corbee Wunderlich. That's a lot of Assistant Superintendents, by the way. All right, so the three folks, so we include myself, four of us are here today. So we do have a IDO, which in our school district is the instructional delivery option, which is whether or not parents are choosing remote learning or on-campus education. So the second grading period is about to come about. And so far, October the 9th is a hard date for parents to decide for the second grading period. And right now we are approaching 3,000 parents who are choosing from remote to back onto campus, and about 100 going the other way, meaning on campus to remote. So once again, best decisions are being made by parents relative to the consideration about health concerns and for their children, for their families, and so forth. So I think once again, things are going well from that perspective, and it looks like a lot of parents are coming back onto campus, and for many different reasons. But at the same time, though, I've been hearing a lot about the notion of what remote education is, and this is the first time in the history of our country and our state, our community, that we've experienced all of us trying to figure out remote learning. We've heard about these things, right? E-learning, virtual learning, and so forth. And distance learning, I think, is another terminology that's been used in the past. But let's get a little general thoughts about your thoughts. Have you been dealing with this now since August the 25th in the school year, really since last school year when the pandemic began? So, Kristen, what's your thoughts about remote learning so far?
There's nothing easy about balancing remote learners and on-campus learners, especially at the same time. And so our teachers have done a good job of figuring out what works and what doesn't work for them and for their students. But I think just the fact that remote learning in and of itself isn't something that they learned in college, that we're trying to teach them along the way while they're doing it. It's a tough job to do, but they're hanging in there and they're doing the best they can.
Yeah, so it's we're literally flying the plane and building at the same time. So that's kind of the situation, and I think that's a very good description there. Ms. Moffat, what's your thoughts? I mean, from an elementary perspective, remote learning, which is, it's hard to do, all these fun activities in kindergarten and first grade remotely. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I kind of go back always to the relationship part of teaching. And I think that's been one of the biggest challenges that I've noted, I've heard with the parents, is how to get a teacher to be able to connect through the screen. I think that's something that we're still working on. Some teachers are more successful at that. And so we are actually in the upcoming days here going to be showcasing some of those teachers. That's our next step, is to be able to film some of those classes and see what exactly are they doing. Because much to your point, we are developing some of the pedagogy. We don't have it all, and we're trying to see who's actually being successful. Our principals have been reaching out with those who have been noteworthy, and we're going to spend some time studying those who are doing the best work of connecting the students with the teachers. Once that relationship's formed, then it's making sure we know where our students are, looking at the information, and that's another struggle, is trying to make sure we have adequate data to be able to service our students, because they all have different needs. And so obviously that's a challenge for us, but we're still looking into it and doing our best to continue to support our teachers to be able to give students what they need.
Yeah, so I'm just going to put this out there. Are we just worried about doing this for the time being, or gosh, are we just trying to make best of the best situation? I mean, are we really making this work? What do you think about that, Mr. Wunderlich? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, certainly, right now we've got teachers as Ms. Lueck said, we have them in a new situation. They've never been in this situation before. So right now they're learning, they're trying to manage the classroom, they're trying to manage the instructional delivery option with students that are not at their disposal every day. they're, for lack of better words, yes, we're trying to make the best of a situation right now. But I think we're getting better. I think every week it gets better for teachers in terms of managing classrooms, in terms of making connections with learners. So I think we are getting better in that regard. I think we have to be mindful as parents and as a community as well, though, that as we make this IDEO change, there's going to be teachers who've never been combo teachers before, or never had to manage remote learners before, that are now going to have to do that. So there is going to be some teachers who are now going through some growing pains, if you will, with this as well. But certainly we want to make this the best we can for students and for parents and for our teachers, to make sure that they're having meaningful instruction and that students are benefiting from their instructional delivery option.
So what, really anybody can chime in, but what's not going well with remote learning? Let's kind of just be somewhat honest about the situation, and because we're hearing about it. And I've heard of my share of thoughts from parents and kids, students and teachers for that matter. So, what are some of the general things that are not going well?
Certainly, I think some of the things that, there's some admittedly there's some technology issues that both from our end as a school district and also at home, there's some technology gaps that are existing there.
You mean like Wi-Fi is not available at home, or
yes.
Maybe some of the devices are not available and so forth?
Yes, sir. What we run into there is internet speeds at home, Wi-Fi devices not being available, computers without microphones or cameras, which make things difficult as well.
A couple of the parents have brought me information about lack of printers. So some parents are able to print math work, let's just say, to practice at home as part of their homework assignment. But some parents are not able to print some of those stuff off of the Seesaw, which is our LMS, or learning management system, in the elementary level, for example. So they can't really print these things. So they've been asking, well, should we have some kind of copies of workbooks or available, right? So there's some technology issues. What else is not working?
I think time management from the student perspective is an issue. I think due to asynchronous learning opportunities that are available to students, some students aren't taking advantage of direct instruction from their teachers, and they're trying to jump into the work or the assignment component of a classroom without having the prior knowledge built through the instruction. And it's leading them to not understand or be unsuccessful with the work, because although I'd love to think that all middle school and high school kids are responsible enough to manage their time, although they're doing the work, they may not be doing all the necessary steps in terms of learning cycle to be successful.
Yeah, so big time management issue. But you're going to say something there?
Yeah, also just the fact that we haven't been able to reach everybody. So that's been a struggle. So if you're remote, you're not showing up to campus, and we haven't been able to get a hold of students, that certainly is a big strain on the system for making sure that we're getting kids what they need.
Another thing that's a challenge is just the engagement piece. I was speaking actually with a parent today about a child. She just asked, does my child have to come to every live session, or can we skip a few here and there? And I just explained that, yes, they'll be counted here for attendance if they come to some, but for the optimal educational benefit, you're going to want your child to attend, because it's much like you taking them out to go to a doctor's appointment. So if you miss a class, just think about last year. How many times did you take them out to miss a whole class? Because they feed on each other. So I think that making sure that we realize it's still the same amount of learning that needs to take place, and the importance of every live lesson, I think those are some of the pieces. And we know we can't make everyone be at them, but the value of attending regularly is substantial.
Yeah. There's a lot of logistical issues to work through, I think, and then just trying to monitor what's going on the other side of that screen, I think, has been very difficult for our teachers. The other big issue is coming up, and, it's coming up more so at the secondary level, but this notion of cheating, when tests are given or homework assignments and so on. So it's the old science fair project issue, who's actually creating the projects, right? And I'm not trying to say that, parents are out there doing the work for the kids or so forth, but, teachers and other kids have talked about this issue in terms of how do we monitor the integrity of the work that's being done. So, and I don't have a good answer for that. And I don't know how, what your thoughts on this issue is, but it is a perplexing issue under the current situation that we're dealing with as remote learners. I know we made some suggestions about what we can do. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, it's not an easy question to answer. We have put in some suggestions for how to make it fair and how to level the playing field for students to make sure that we just don't give the option for change. It doesn't have to be there. But again, this is something just like the remote learning in and of itself. It's not something that we've been trained for or planned for. And so we're having to experiment, try different things and get feedback, and then go back to the drawing board. So we're just trying out what works best.
One of the suggestions has been sort of open book tests or, and as I was talking about this earlier before the podcast, colleges and universities are doing some online learning. And, my daughter's at a school and where, you get one grade for one writing project that you turn in. And that's it. That's a whole entire grade of the class, right? Now, colleges and universities maybe get away with that. But is there a way for us to, instead of doing traditional tests, a written work assignment or writing that is a culmination work as a really a test? I mean, I know that, the integrity goes, well, who's going to write that, question? So I know somebody could say that. But is that a better way of doing that instead of just a multiple choice question like you would do? I don't know.
It does have some benefits. I mean, we have suggested that we do alternative assessments for kids, which means, doing the open-ended responses, letting students explain their thinking. It also helps teachers get a window into how the students are processing the information. So that is certainly something that we've recommended. The tough side of that is it makes a lot more work for the teacher. It's much easier to give a multiple choice test because the grading on that for 120 kids is super fast. Reading short answers or essays takes a lot longer. You get more information about your kids, but our teachers are already taxed with a lot of workload. So there's that tough balance of making sure we're doing what's best for students, but also balancing making sure we're taking care of our teachers as well.
Yeah, and I would think just one paper for one grade, like a college university, would be a very tough sell. That's why we have enough daily grades to sort of, give every kid a chance. Somewhat of a developmental issue, maybe perhaps maturity issues in many cases for some of our kids. So maybe that's something to contend with as well too. If you were to say that let's do this beyond the pandemic as part of the remote learning, what would it be that you would say that, you know what, hey, I think we ought to somehow make sure that this keeps on. This is what we still do in our school district beyond the pandemic situation when it comes to remote learning. Is there anything that pop into your mind about that?
The level of creativity that I have seen from our teachers has really been a strong improvement in many ways. I have seen teachers finding new technology resources and collaboration. I think I've seen the teachers have to work together more than ever. And that is a skill that will transcend this time period that we're in. So I really think there have been a few components that have definitely improved us for the future in education.
I do think, too, that although technology's had its barriers, that it's been good for our kids to learn how to engage with an LMS, for learning where to get their assignments, submit assignments, and navigate a learning management system, because that will be something that as they transition to college programs, that will be required of them. And interfacing with that and being able to navigate that, I think, has been a valuable skill that our kids have been able to become proficient at.
Yeah.
And just being able to have different options for the students to show what they know. Before it would depend on whether the teacher had that knowledge or had that capability, and now it's there for everybody. And we're finding teachers who didn't know they had this skill and who are actually enjoying it and for lack of better words, rocking the remote learning. So that's been fantastic, and I can see them wanting to continue to have the opportunity to teach students who also want to work remotely. So that's been a benefit.
One specific thing that I would like to preserve and go forward with is the notion of providing 1-to-1 or 1-to-2 tutorial sessions through the remote process. So you can imagine beyond the pandemic at some point, sooner than later, I hope, but where instead of the student having to come back up to school for a tutorial session to ask a question, because the notion of monitoring 30 kids on a Zoom call or Google Meets is very difficult, but one teacher to 2 kids working with one problem or something of that nature, there might be more of a way to do that I would like to see preserving going forward with. Now that's a time issue in many ways and so on, but still, I do see some benefits, and I do agree with you about the LMS. I think even in the workforce, remote workers and different folks have to understand that. So I think there's a lot of different things that's going to come about, I think. So I think just kind of trying to make it work, trying to keep, sharpening this probably is what our, obviously our intent. But, earlier I think I asked a very unfair question. That's, are we just doing this just for the sake of just doing this for now? But in reality, I think we are learning a lot about what we do as educators. And I think this has been an opportunity for us to sort of think about modernization or getting with the times, I guess, in terms of what the rest of the world may have already done with technology and infrastructure and all that good stuff. So I think this gives us a way to kind of jump to the next level in that regard. So while we're living with it, it's very difficult to think about it. But stepping aside just a tad bit, I think down the road, we'll probably have to have some after-action review on this issue about the whole process. But I think it will give us some more ways to think about creatively down the road. But I do agree with you, Ms. Moffat, the collaboration piece has been stronger than ever. I think teachers have really realized that they really can't do this by themselves. And I think hopefully that transcends, to your point, that they realize that working together to educate kids is better than doing it by yourself. So if we can kind of make that stick, and that'll be a good thing. All right, well, listen, I appreciate you guys joining me today. You've been listening to the Comal ISD Radio. Join us next time as we talk about the IDL changeover and all the protocols that we're going to need to implement as a result of more kids on school. And so we'll talk more about that. And thanks for listening.